If you thought James Gunn had actually given you some clarity about what to expect from the DC universe, he made it abundantly clear soon after that he was going to muddy the waters again, and that is indeed what he did. So after he definitively stated the DCU starts with Creature Commandos, he then declared Peacemaker Season 2 will address the new DCU continuity. Let's get into this here. So Gunn has fielded a number of questions on threads lately, and one of them seemingly provided a definitive answer as to when Gunn's new DC universe begins. Interestingly, this is all coming after the WGA deal. I'm wondering if he was actually not posting anything in solidarity with them. But anyways, he said, nothing is canon until Creature Commandos next year, a sort of aperitif to the DCU, and then a deeper dive into the universe with Superman Legacy. After that, it's a very human drive to want to understand everything all the time, but I think it's okay to be confused on what's happening in the DCU since no one has seen anything from the DCU yet. People should not be confused about what's happening in the DCU because no one has seen anything yet. People are only confused because you say one thing and then you say another, and it's you that are confusing people. So if you didn't say anything about what was happening in the DCU, people wouldn't be confused because they wouldn't know anything because you didn't say anything. But since you've said multiple different things that contradict each other, people are rightfully confused. So you need to look at yourself, James Gunn, and put the onus on you for confusing people. But I digress. But he clearly says here, nothing is canon until Creature Commandos next year. And then you get the deeper dive with Superman Legacy. He then added in a follow-up saying, and yes, some actors will be playing characters they've played in other stories, and some plot points might be consistent with plot points from the dozens of films, shows, and animated projects that have come from DC in the past, but nothing is canon until Creature Commandos and Superman Legacy. He's reiterated that. We then got this. He said Zolo Maridueña will continue playing Blue Beetle in the DCU, as Viola Davis will Amanda Waller, and John Cena will Peacemaker. He then also said Freddy as Vigilante is still around. This person asked him if Freddy Sherman would continue, and James Gunn said, yes, Freddy as Vigilante is still around. He was then asked by this guy, Darrell Randall, for any actors' characters returning, will the audience, viewers, need to watch anything prior to Creature Commandos to understand what's going on? So that's one question. And then he asked another. Is this a clean starting point here for all audience, but a wink to returning viewers? That one's a little grammatically issues. I think that I kind of got what he was saying there. But James Gunn says they will not. No. And I think he's talking about the first question. I think he's answering the first question there. Viewers don't need to watch anything prior to Creature Commandos to understand what's going on. So that, I do think, syncs up with what he said, that Creature Commandos is the starting point for the canon. You don't need to watch anything beforehand to understand what's happening in the DCU. So I actually think he's on point here. He's on message. He's got it. But then Darrell Randall asked another question. He says, will Season 2 of Peacemaker take place in the new DCU, new continuity, or will it at least be addressed? So we got two questions there again. And James Gunn answers yes and yes. So he's saying that Season 2 of Peacemaker will take place in the new DCU, new continuity, and that it joining the new DCU continuity will be addressed. So I think that 100% contradicts what he just said here, that you don't need to watch anything prior to Creature Commandos. Well, if Peacemaker Season 2 is going to jump to this new DCU continuity or jump into this new universe or however they're going to do it, one would think you would have to watch the first season of Peacemaker. And the first season of Peacemaker is actually connected to The Suicide Squad film, which has connections to David Ayer's Suicide Squad with Harley Quinn and the other characters that are in it as well. And then they have connections with Batman. Ben Affleck is in the Suicide Squad, David Ayer's Suicide Squad, who actually got in touch with Harley Quinn, Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. And then we have the Birds of Prey with Margot Robbie there. So it's all very, very confusing. And then even if you go back to his initial chapter here, Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters, initial announcement, not chapter, he says, Viola Davis is going to team up with members of Team Peacemaker, and this is a story that's been created by Crystal Henry, who did Watchmen, and Jeremy Carver, who created the Doom Patrol. It's a fantastic story that's out of this world. So even then, he was saying that Team Peacemaker was going to be showing up in Waller, which takes place after Creature Commandos comes out. So Waller is set within the DCU, but he's already saying that Team Peacemaker is in it. So it's very, very confusing. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. You would think that if Team Peacemaker is showing up in Waller, you would want people to have some understanding of what happened in season 1 of Peacemaker, and then also what happened with Peacemaker and the Suicide Squad, right? You would think those would actually play together. And then obviously, like I just said, you go down that kind of winding, confusing road that he set out here. So, and then at the end of season 1 of Peacemaker, oh, look who's there. Ezra Miller's Flash, Jason Momoa's Aquaman, and they got stunt doubles to play Wonder Woman and Superman, but they were there. The Justice League is at the end of Peacemaker season 1. So, who knows what's going on here? I think he would have been better off just doing a hard, clean cut and starting over. But I think what ended up happening, and this is just me speculating, this isn't any kind of information I've heard, I think that James Gunn had already kind of crafted off his niche of DCU with Peacemaker, the Suicide Squad, Waller, Peacemaker Season 2, and Creature Commandos were clearly spin-offs of that. They were already in the works before they announced this DCU slate, and he just decided to latch them on to the new DCU because he wants his projects to succeed, whereas he basically cut everything else off. You can just look at the box office grosses and you can see people clearly realized that he was cutting things off. Shazam, Fury of the Gods, Blue Beetle, The Flash, etc. Huge losses, tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars if you add them all together. But yeah, so I think that's what's really going on. And I think that's why it's so confusing, is because he has his little pet projects that he already had in the works. And then David Zaslav came in and said, hey, I want you to run DCU. And then he crafted together his plan, put it out at the end of January, and he put his pet projects all front-loaded them in the beginning with Creature Commandos and Waller. And then obviously they announced Peacemaker Season 2, I think 2 weeks later, February 14th or something like that, I think is when they announced that, which was after this, because this came out like January 31st. So it's all very confusing, but I do think that kind of explains what's going on. But James Gunn isn't saying that. He's muddying the waters even more, making it very confusing for people to figure out what is happening. And I think that just turns people off. We'll see what happens when Superman Legacy does indeed come out. What is it, like 2 years from now? I feel like 2025 or something, I think, is when it's supposed to come out. So we'll see if people actually dive head first and whether or not this DCU universe that they've promised us will actually come to fruition. And I think a lot of it does rest on the success of Superman Legacy. But let me know what you think about James Gunn and his comments about the DCU. Are they confusing you just as they're confusing seemingly everyone else?
Subscribe for more.